fire station.
Okay.
But of course, when I talked to USDA has concur on it. And I called them Thursday morning and I said, "Can we award contingent upon concurrence?" Yeah, that's fine. We need to state that in our resolution. We should specifically state, like, it says the mayor and city administrator are authorized directed.
Jay's getting an agenda.
Don't we need to say it somewhere
Do you have an agenda?
in our resolution here that the award is concurrent upon, contingent upon concurrence from the USDA? And the question is, where's the best place to do that?
I would put it into something right in front, says something, just substitute concurrence of the USDA.
So just, okay, just a clause right in the
Yeah,
front.
right in front.
Okay, all right. So it's just subject to concurrence from the USDA.
Yeah.
The mayor,
Yeah.
and that's sufficient where if something didn't happen and we didn't get concurrence.
No, it's no, yeah, it's no, there's nothing approved at that point.
Okay. And that question will probably get asked during the meeting too. just
Okay.
to
Okay.
Make sure the council has a comfort level that if USDA for some reason chose not to
Right.
concur, they're not on the motion.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Still coming? Look, it's nasty. 3 minutes ago. Where's the photo?
It's really boring.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, right by, just past the coke refinery and then the coke there. It was like a whiteout storm.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, there's already cars that pulled over on the side and put the light out.
That's what you just come through?
Yeah, but Coates, coke refinery was just
Down your
terrible.
show me just a,
Yeah, no, that's maybe the worst rain I've ever hit, where it was just raining, it was no hail or nothing. Just rain, but
Straight
with
down?
water. Yeah, coming straight down, and all these cars would pull over the side, so you could see lights blinking. You say, oh, I hope nobody lets us out in the lane, and you're well going about 20 miles an hour just to get around them. Then it let up, and all of a sudden it came even worse. It was really weird. Then it was fine after that, it was just raining the whole way.
Yeah, probably.
so goes all down.
How are you?
Out there again. Was there rain or was there any hail? Just waiting. Luckily, I had to come on early for the work sessions, yeah, so I don't think it was going dry. Things didn't happen.
Yeah.
But everything I was hearing on the radio after I was like, terrible. It says it's trying to get
I was watching it, and I was doing a little bit. What did he say? It showed.
Hopefully before I was wondering about UNC, because you were coming from Mankato, I was picturing you guys, driving right in front of the tornado with the tornado chasing you.
I was. I was literally in front of that whole storm and getting messages about how my office was flooded and the tornadoes were touching down. I think there was 4. Yep. I'll get to head right back into it. I'll be all over it.
I should have moved north there.
You would start the meeting now.
No, we are waiting for you.
Okay, so here is.
Right, they're running down the third line already.
You want to pass that resolution, Mark, he has the other stuff. This is Richard?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the revised pay request. Yep.
That is your extra stuff. Scott?
Thank you.
Actually, alternate 6 should say deduct.
What was the amount to the revised 180?
188, 263, and 61 cents.
Hey, Ken, did we, that revised pay request? Do you have that?
I just passed it out,
Oh, you just,
and I gave it to you yesterday or so.
I believe we're all ready to go here.
okay.
You're gonna take on.
Let's see. All this happened last week.
Apparently they didn't get an issue back there.
Not reading, recording,
Wow.
must be on L1. Not recording, check channel button, must be on. Can you turn on more lights back here? There's a couple more lights that aren't turned on.
That's everything.
Always turns on the picture.
Aren't you just love the modern electronic world?
Trouble, but who knows? Should we try to record and see something?
No, if it's not up on here now, it's not gonna work.
No, I think that's it. It shows here, but now we're.
Anybody know what a channel button is on a VCR?
It isn't over here.
Yeah, what's an ECR?
Here, Kevin.
Actually, I do still have one. I've got one that works.
Whoa, we got
Oh, I hit the menu button.
I have a note, if not recording, check the channel button, it must be on L-1.
Yeah,
What
that's-
channel button?
Yeah, that's the channel button that's on the VCR itself.
On the
Oh,
VCR
yeah.
itself.
Yep, and yeah, because that's your line in, line one. I can help you there. In fact, you know, it's funny, I actually have that one. Channel right here. See it right here? So there's-
Oh, here it is. Oh, we know why you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
That was a free.
Expertise with VCRs.
Is it still blinking 12 o'clock?
Okay, let's call the June 14th, 2016 City Council meeting to order. Oh! All right, let's do the pledge first. Sidetrack, getting everything out.
I'll make it.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'll call the June 14th, 2016 City Council meeting. All council members present, Administrator Paulson, Engineer Ryan, Attorney Big. I know there are some additions and changes to the agenda, at least one.
There's one that I had.
You do citizen comments first?
You're correct. Is there anyone who would like to address the council on anything not already on the agenda? Step up to the podium and state your name and what your concern is.
Hello, my name is Sean Sider, live over at 24th Street. I'm coming here tonight to complain about the water issues that have been coming off the alley for the last several years. Talked with Mark about it last year, and the city engineer came over and looked at it. Nothing's been done. The problems are only getting worse. Just brings a lot of mud and junk off the alley into my yard, down the sidewalk. It's caused damage to my 3 years ago, it caused damage to the garage. It busted up the slab during the winter from all the water runoff coming off the alley. Froze up again 2 years ago. So I'll claim for getting the garage fixed and try to get something resolved on getting that water problem stopped coming down the alley. Because in the wintertime, when snow melts and it runs down the sidewalk, it freezes back up, and the sidewalk is a sheet of ice. And I'm not gonna allow that to happen anymore, so I gotta figure if I need to come up with a fix myself, if the city's gonna do something about it.
What was that address?
20 Forest Street, it's at the corner of Front and Forest.
On Front Street, right next to the speed hump. Joe, you have a comment on this situation?
Well, Mark, maybe I'll let you speak to it first. You're the one that brought the
Well,
authorization last year.
Last year, I went out there with, and I've been out there a couple times, because I think I went out there with you before, and then I came out there with Brian from your office, from the Rochester office of Bolton Bank, and looked at it, and one of the things that they found when we were out there was there's a lot of the water runoff appears to be coming from that house to the, no, let's see.
That may be some of it, but that didn't what caused the damage to the garage, because that pipe comes out about 10 foot from the back of the garage. So unless water has the ability to flow uphill, there's no way the water coming off that can go to the garage and, cause the damage there. But it's just been getting worse over the years. They keep putting down, every year they put down more stuff on that alley, and it just keeps building up and up and up. So it's, it's basically a big mound there, so the water, I guess years ago, it probably ran out to the street fine, but, every year I go out there, clean up the sidewalk, and just doing a lot of work for something, for a problem that the city is causing.
So, I guess one of the things that you could do is you could file a claim with, the League of Minnesota Cities like we have with that other
Okay.
item that's going on. The way that is sloped follows the same contour, I will say this so too,
Yeah.
as all of the other alleys. When you look to this direction to the east, I don't know what the answer would be short of putting some kind of a storm sewer or
Well,
something.
there's a 36-inch storm drain that does run all the way from Front Street going south. As far as I know, it probably goes up to First Street. They could tap into that, put in a metal grate over it, and have the water run off into that. It goes between my property line and my neighbor's, so it'd be right behind
The one
me.
that you're talking about that was underground.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't have record of that. I haven't been able to find anything on that. Not saying that it's not there, but I can't say
yeah.
with any certainty that it is there. But certainly, if there was a way to tie into something like that, we would look at that. But no one has any record, no one has any knowledge of that being there, of the current people that are here.
Yeah.
And you know how the records are,
Couldn't
unfortunately.
they rechannel the alley so it slopes somewhat to the south? Because on the south side of that alley, it's raised up. So if they were to channel it to there when the water went off, it would butt up against where it's raised, and it would stay in that little gully there and then run out to the street.
Well, I guess, so there's two things. One is you should file a claim.
Okay, I'll do
The
that.
second one, when you do, make sure that you get estimates for what the damage is.
Okay.
Secondly, I can have Joe go out there again and specifically look at the alley and see if he's got any ideas. And I'm more than willing to bring him back and say, okay, here's what this would cost to take care of it. We can certainly do that.
As going into winter, I'm gonna have to come up with some kind of a solution between now and winter. I'm not gonna have another frozen sidewalk, this winter. We're supposed to keep our sidewalks clear, and if it's frozen up solid from the runoff, somebody's walking down there and falls and breaks your arm, I could get sued.
I understand
Something
that.
The city's caused it.
That is a irregular, but a lot of sidewalks
Yeah,
have that, but there is an irregularity to that. I agree with that 100%. But the alley that's a bigger thing as far as trying to solve. There's no easy answer for
yeah, I
that,
understand.
short of redoing the whole thing. But then you gotta go 1, 2, how many blocks down so it's all consistent the way it drains.
Well, it would just run out into the street at that point, and then it goes down to the gutters.
Yeah, I would say that when we looked at it, that's what I was looking for, and I don't remember exactly, because it was last fall, but I don't think it works that way, the way that street is either. I don't think that we can just have it drain in the street and have all that water go away.
Well, the water would run out to the street, and then it goes, since there's a crown there, it would taper off to either side, and then it would go by the, along the curve to the storm drains.
Well, we'll look at that again and see if there's anything we can do, short of reconstructing the whole thing or whatever.
Yeah, I recall the situation, the location of it, but I don't recall all the specifics. I know we've got a lot of pictures of it, and we had some notes and things we'd written up last year, but I don't want to just speak from memory. I want to go back and look at the information we looked at with you last year, look at the site again, and then, like you said, Mark, we can evaluate. There's two issues: what happening on his private property, but what's happening in the public
Right.
alleyway, in the public sidewalk, in the public street. We may be able to have some options to do something with. So,
It's a gravel alley, so you should be able to do some re-grading and get the water to run into the street. So
We'll be able to do something.
I think,
How much work it would be remains to be seen.
Right.
I think we'll look at it. I think,
Find out.
I think one of the ideas too might have been like an installation of like a berm or a curb or something like that on the north side. As you mentioned, on the south side, it's higher,
Yeah,
so it forces water to keep going towards the street.
yeah.
On your side, if I remember right, it just kind of your garage and driveway are lower.
Yeah.
So anything that makes it off the alley, then continues on that, to the
That's
north.
from 100 years of,
Right.
you know, when they keep putting down stuff on that alley every year, it just keeps.
So, you know, there may be the option of getting some material, you know, whether it be some clay or some black dirt or something, and actually putting a little berm between the alleyway and the edge of the driveway or the edge of the garage, so that it forms like a natural curb. So any water that does start to go that way hits that and is, you know, directed out towards the street.
I think there's some simple grading and some,
Some berming maybe.
Berming.
Yeah.
That alley down a bit.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to
What we
say.
don't want to do is take a problem on this side
But
and move it to the other
the
side.
other side's higher.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
other side's definitely
you can go to an inverse crown, what they call an inverse crown, where you make the middle the lowest. So the alleyway drains towards the middle and goes out. But then that's gonna be dependent on, can we get the water still out to the street? And then, you know, that's gonna result with the most maintenance issues for the city, because you're gonna be, that water gonna be running on this middle of your alleyway. Causing you to come out there and make sure it's maintained, you know, most frequently. But-
That's where the water's supposed to go, out the street, down the,
Right, so
Problem
maybe,
that
so,
needs
yeah.
to be solved.
There may be a combination between some berming and some grading that can at least try and relieve some of the public water from the public right-of-way that's getting onto the private property. So we can certainly take a look at that and
And
with the
for bringing it up,
administrative options.
Well, I'll be working from home the next 2 days, if you guys want to come up and look at the sidewalk. See all the mud and junk.
Yeah, I would encourage any of you guys, also if you want to go look at that, to go
Yeah.
take a look at it. So.
Especially after tonight's rain, yeah.
It looks a lot better in person, I'm trying to describe.
It does. I agree.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as to the changes on the agenda.
Natalie Hogan, hire for the uni would be under new business. JK, new business.
And the pay request,
Well, their pay request, the amount that you approve is the amended pay request. I mean, that's not any kind of a change in the actual agenda. The pay request is already on there. To approve a pay request,
it gives an amount here that's,
and you could just say approve pay request 2 in the amount of, the new amount of 180, whatever that is. And I think that would be sufficient, wouldn't it, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think you need to change the agenda. It's already on there.
and that's all you have.
Yep.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
On second. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda. Is there anything that should be removed from the consent agenda, or do we have a motion to approve that as printed?
make a motion to accept it as read.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. No presentations, public hearings, so we get to item 7, engineering. Update on First Street reconstruction project. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your packet is a memo that we prepared with an update on the First Street reconstruction project since the last city council meeting. Summary of construction activities. All the utility work is now complete. Concrete work, including the curbing, the sidewalk, and the driveway aprons, was begun the week of May 30th and is getting wrapped up this week. And when I drove through the project just before our work session this evening, I see that they have completed all of it. So all of the concrete work now on the project is complete. The gravel base work on the street was being worked on this week and was intended to be completed. And it looks like they're very close, if not done with that. With this rain tonight, they may have to come back in and do some touching up of that gravel. They did, based on when they finished last of the concrete work, which was just within the last couple of days, they're scheduling the paving of the first layer of the bituminous, which is 2 inches thick, is scheduled to be done next week. And from the paving subcontractor, looks like his window of opportunity to get his equipment over here is most likely gonna be Thursday or Friday of next week. So by the end of next week, we should have the first lift of blacktop down on the street. Once they get that done, they'll come in and they'll do all the sodding of the boulevards. You've probably seen they've been out there, they've got most of the boulevards dressed up and the black dirt all spread out and getting everything graded and shaped. They'll get the sodding done once that first layer of blacktop is down. And once they're done with the sodding, they'll clean everything up, and then they'll come in and pave that final layer of the asphalt. That's 1.5 inches thick, and we anticipate that is likely to occur by the end of June. So hopefully the project will be substantially complete before the 4th of July, which is a good, roughly a month ahead of schedule. Because substantial completion date was July. Yeah, I think substantial completion was July 29th, and then I think they had until the middle of August for final cleanup. So yeah, everything's coming along very well with the schedule. We did issue a project newsletter last week just to update the residents on the construction operations. It was mailed out to all of the properties along the project. It was also posted on the project website. We've included a copy of that in your packet for reference. And then, of course, we've got the monthly pay request for the contractor. And we had sent it to the city administrator and the contractor at the same time. And when he went through, he noticed a couple of his quantities were different than what we had. And after review, we've agreed with his quantities. There were actually just a couple of typos that we had in our first version of the pay request. So we've got that corrected, and the revised pay request has been furnished to you tonight. The payment as of tonight's revised pay request is $188,263.61. Everything is still tracking within budget on the project. So I have no reservations about the quantities that are included in tonight's pay request, and I would recommend approval of the pay request and payment to the contractor. And with that, I would be glad to take any questions.
Any questions or a motion to approve
Mr.
pay
Mayor.
request number 2?
Mr. Mayor.
I have a safety question about the project. I live on it. Being retired, I sit out front, watch it quite often. There is a stop sign missing, eastbound on First Street. It's missing at Forest. I'm seeing more and more cars go through that. Right now, there's traffic is very light, cross traffic. But as that gets smoother and you get that first layer down, you're gonna have an accident there. People, yeah.
Is it going east on First Street?
East on First Street on Forest. There always was a stop sign there. Something got pulled out during construction, I guess.
Taken out when they were changing out the
Yeah, we can certainly look at that.
base, and then
The intent was
that
not
needs
to,
be replaced.
the intent was not to change any of those, so we'll confirm
At
with
this
the
point,
contractor.
the streets
And
technically not open to traffic.
Correct, and at
Not
this point.
technically open,
yeah.
but you've got traffic on it, believe me.
Yeah. And the specifications, the contract is very clear that safety is under the jurisdiction of the contractor. They are responsible for the safety. We are certainly able to point things out to them if we see
The other stop
safety
signs are
hazard.
still in their normal locations on the street. I think they
It may be
have 5
that-
others.
It may be that, maybe the post got damaged when they pulled the old one, they haven't gotten a chance to do the full shift, but we can certainly follow up with that. The intent was not to change any of the traffic control along that street, so we'll follow up with them and make sure that they're aware of that. And as we mentioned, right now the contract, or the street is under their control, so safety issues like that are under their purview, but certainly want to get that corrected as quickly as we can.
Shouldn't take more than one quick phone call to get them down there to fix that.
Yeah,
It's
that should
their-
be
it's
simple
their
fix.
best interest also.
Yeah, it's the best interest of everybody.
Yes. That's what I'm pointing out. They are responsible now, so
Yeah.
it's in their interest to get back in there.
And it may be
It
that
slipped
Russ or
through the
Brian,
cracks. Someone didn't
Yeah.
notice it.
maybe it's already been brought to their attention.
Moved on down the block to do another job, and but thanks for bringing it up, and that will definitely have to be done tomorrow.
It's definitely on the checklist of, items that need to be completed before the project is done.
Before the week is done. So, once again, I ask, do we have motion to approve pay request number 2?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Who did the second? Thank you.
John. And we go to the update on the fire facility project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the benefit of the audience, we'll just let you know, we did have a work session tonight at 5:30 on the fire station project, and I'm going to refer to the memo that we prepared for the work session packet. That's got most of the information that we want to review during the council meeting here. The memo that I prepared for your work session packet provided an update on the project since the last council meeting, on the various elements of it. For the plan specifications, you recall that a work session was held on May 6th to review the final plan specifications with the council. Council had some direction as a result of that work session. We brought the plans back for official review at the council meeting on May 10th, and the city council did approve the plan specifications at that meeting with directions that we update the list of alternates, we change the LED lighting to become part of the base bid, we eliminate the kitchen cabinets and sink to reduce the project cost, we reduce the size of the public parking lot by 16 stalls to reduce the cost of that parking lot, and then we change curb on the south side of the public parking lot to be an optional curb that could be done by the unit price once a contract had been awarded. Following direction from the council at that work session, we did update the plans. The council, as part of the approval, set the bid opening time and date for 2 p.m. on June 8th and authorized us to advertise for the receipt of bids. We did publish the ad in the official city newspaper, the Kenyon Leader, on May 18th, and also in the Rochester newspaper on May 18th and May 25th. We also posted the plans electronically so that they could get wide publicity. We updated the plans and specifications per council direction and got them back into the USDA architect on May 19th for his review. He turned them right around in a day and gave us concurrence on the 20th to proceed with publishing those for the bid. We did wind up issuing 3 addendums during the course of the bid review period. Addendum number 1 was published on May 20th, addendum number 2 on May 25th, addendum number 3 on June 3rd, all with fairly minor clarifications on questions that we had received regarding the plans or regarding the specifications. So then we did proceed with the bid opening as scheduled at 2 p.m. last Wednesday. We got very good bids. We received 13 bids, which is an excellent response for our project. In regards to the bid results, there were 13 bids received. One was obviously significantly out of line with the other bids, and we suspected there may have been an error in the bid. And we did get a hold of that contractor immediately after the bid opening. They did double check their math and found that they had made an error in the number they submitted to the city. So they have officially requested to be withdrawn, or to withdraw their bid from consideration. We did provide a copy of that letter to you in your packet from Construction Collaborative dated June 8th, apologizing for their error and admitting it was just an honest mathematical error they made in the spreadsheet they had put together to calculate their bid, and requesting that the city allow them to withdraw their bid from consideration. With their bid withdrawn, there were 12 bids then up for consideration. They were all very comparable, ranging within about 10% of each other. A bid tabulation was prepared and was included in your packet that listed the bids from all 13 bidders that were received. As you can see, we indicated the 13th bid even though it was withdrawn just for purposes of completeness of the bid tabulation of what we actually received when we opened the bids that day. Our estimate for the base bid was $2.3 million. All of the 12 bids for consideration are below that amount. The lowest of the base bids was $2,089,000, which is roughly 10% under the estimate, so that's very good. There were 4 alternates that were included in the bid. Alternate number, and these 4 were decided upon by the City Council on May 10th when you approved the plans. The alternates were for installation of flagpoles outside the building, for installation of the enhanced entrance treatment with the columns and the canopy, going with the adhered roof system where the roof membrane is physically glued to the building rather than a ballasted roof system where it's simply held down by the weight of rocks that are put down for balance. And then an alternate for consideration of removing the finish from the concrete panels. Concrete panels were bid to have a certain finish on them in accordance with the elevations of the building that have been shared during the design. And the alternate would remove those panels and result in a lower cost, remove those finishes from the panels and result in a lower cost. And just for benefit of council, clarification of the numbering system, we had numbered the alternates 1, 2, 3, 4 when you approved the bids in May. And in the memo, I explained why the actual bids that went out, the alternates were numbered 1, 2, 4, and 6. It simply was a fact that the USDA architect had reviewed the plans when they were about 50% done, and we had identified some alternates at that time and had numbered them 1 through 4. In order to change those numbers to the numbers you had identified at your council meeting on May 10th would have been very labor intensive because they show up on so many different sheets in the plans between the plumbing system and the mechanical system and the structural sheets and the architectural sheets, that it would have taken a lot of man hours on behalf of the architect to do that work with corresponding cost. Also, if we missed any of the references in any of the individual sheets, it would have caused confusion for the bidders. So when we reviewed the alternates with the USDA architect, he said simply, leave the numbering system as you already have it, cross out any you're not going to use, and just add any new ones at the end. So that's why alternate number 3, which originally had been for the LED lights, went away because council had directed they become part of the base bid. And alternate number 5, which had been for the solid countertops, went away because council decided there was no real scenario where you saw accepting that alternate, so that one was also stricken. Alternate number 6 was created for the wall panel finishes because that identified by council at your May 10th meeting was a new alternate that had not been previously in the plan. So that's how we wound up with the final numbering of alternates 1, 2, 4, and 6. In a practical sense, it's the same 4 alternates you had identified in May 10th, and you still have the full ability to evaluate the bids with any combination of the alternates in the order you prefer them. But I just want to make sure that council understood why the numbers that you saw in the actual alternates received were different than what we identified in May 10th. The other element regarding the project is the USDA funding application. You recall the funding application itself had to go down to the Office of General Counsel in Kansas City and be reviewed by them for completeness and all of that. When we had our last meeting on May 10th, that was in process. It had been sent down there and had been down there for about 2 or 2.5 weeks. We did get correspondence back from the USDA on May 17th from our specialist here in the Faribault office that she had received the clearance from the Office of General Counsel in Kansas City that we were okay to proceed with the bid opening for the project. There's certain forms and paperwork that we have to do now that we have the bids, but everything was cleared for us to go ahead with the bid opening that we had on June 8th. So everything was in place. We did have the bid opening. We got very good bids. And at the work session tonight, the task for the council was to review the bids and to determine were you comfortable proceeding with the contract, do you want to award a contract, and if you do, which if any of the alternates did you want to include in the contract award. So we did have the work session tonight at 5:30 and it got done right at about 6:55. Through the course of discussion, council, if I can speak on behalf of the conclusions of the work session, council reached the conclusion that they did wish to proceed with the contract, and they did wish to include in the contract alternate 1, which would provide for the 3 flagpoles illuminated installed on the site, and also alternate number 4, which is the fully adhered roof system. Alternate 2 for the entrance treatment, the enhanced entrance, was not selected by the council. And also alternate number 6, which would have removed the finishes from the wall panels and just had the plain wall panels, that also was not selected by the council. So the resolution that's been prepared, I think it's been distributed to the council for their consideration, essentially states that that we did receive bids. Excuse me. It lists the base bids received. I'm just trying to find my copy. Here it is. And then the actions taken by the council would be that subject to the concurrence of the USDA, that the council would award the contract and would authorize the mayor and city administrator to enter into that contract with the low bidder, who is Mo's Construction, on behalf of the city of Kenyon for the fire facility construction project, which would include the base bid and alternates number 1 and number 4. So that's the motion that's up for consideration. And as mentioned in the motion, since this project is funded by USDA funds, they have to officially concur with the award of bids. So I did review this with them Thursday morning after we took the bids and made sure that the process of council awarding the contract tonight contingent upon their concurrence was acceptable, and they said, yeah, that's a perfectly fine route to go. It happens on a regular basis on these projects. And I think the city attorney can attest to, if you make that motion tonight,
My next question.
if the USDA does not concur, whether or not there's any exposure on behalf of the city.
No, I mean, and that's why Joe had asked that question before the meeting. At number 2, you've got a clause right at the beginning there that says subject to the concurrence of USDA. That should be enough to require, and if they say, no, we don't want this, then the council would have to adopt a new motion or a new resolution. So this should be sufficient.
So in layman's terms, if the USDA didn't concur, the city council is not on the hook. So with that, the other route that you could go, just so you're aware of your options, for purposes of completeness, is that if you would prefer to get the USDA concurrence before you actually award the contract, you certainly can go that route as well. Now that you've identified the preferred contract, you could direct staff to work with USDA staff to get their concurrence, and then once you have the concurrence from them, we would have to either schedule a special meeting or else wait until the regular July meeting to make the award of contract. So those are your 2 options.
Since there is no legal exposure for us in awarding this contract, subject to concurrence of USDA, there is a hazard of exposing ourselves to inclement weather later in the construction season. I would make a motion right now to approve resolution 2016-16, subject to the concurrence of USDA, to accept the bid of Mo's Construction, enter into a contract with them in the bid amount that they set forth, including alternate number 1 in the amount of $12,400 and alternate number 4 in the amount of $12,500. According to the plans and specifications, therefore approved by the city and on file with the office of the city administrator.
And I would say,
Okay. Richard seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We will have a fire hall.
thank you, council. Based on your action tonight, then we'll prepare the necessary paperwork and get that over to the USDA office so they can start their review on concurrence. The next steps would be, once they do concur, assuming they find everything to be in order and they concur, we then officially would issue a notice of award to the contractor to let them know that they have officially been awarded the contract. We can informally let them know that tomorrow that it's been awarded contingent upon the concurrence. And then once that notice of award goes out, then we can actually issue the contracts to the contractor for them to start to execute their portion of the contracts. From there, then it would come back to the city attorney for review. I'm assuming it has to go through the USDA, again, for concurrence before then the mayor will be authorized to sign the contract on behalf of the city. And then you'd be able to schedule a pre-construction meeting, which would involve the city, the architect, myself, the contractor, the USDA representatives. And once all that occurs, we can then officially issue a notice to proceed, and they can start the construction. So in rough terms, if I had to guess right now, because that's the first question everybody asks is when will construction start? My rough guess would be 1st of August. It's going to take a little while for the concurrence from USDA. Usually takes about 4 weeks to get the contract circulated and reviewed and executed. and then we have to find, get a time in everyone's schedule to have that pre-construction meeting, and then for them to actually mobilize to the site. Roughly, in rough terms, it's gonna be 2 months. So if we're sitting here on June 14th night, I would say August 1st, early part of August is when we probably see equipment arrive on site and start to push the dirt around.
In rough terms, the first big project is all wrapped up and this one starts.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to item C, patching and overlay project quotes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, in the last council meeting on May 10th, the city had obtained a quote for patching and overlaying that they want to do this year, but the quote exceeded $25,000. So, it exceeded the threshold for where a second quote was required by law. At least you had to try to get a second quote.
Right.
So we tabled the quote last month, and a second quote was obtained by the city staff. They provided that to me for review. There were some minor differences in the quotes, but they were close enough that they could be compared. What it boils down to, I wrote a lengthy memo that kind of walked through all the steps of it. But the conclusion is that the city has legally obtained 2 quotes for mill and overlay work and patching work on the city streets. Both quotes were appropriate. A comparison of the quotes indicates that the quote from Bituminous Materials LLC is favorable in terms of cost. In looking at the work that the city had done last year, which also happened to be done by Bituminous Materials LLC, the prices they gave you this year actually are lower than the prices they gave you last year. And as I'd indicated back in May, their price is lower than what I had estimated the work would cost as well. So they're the better of the 2 quotes. Their prices are also better than they were last year and better than what I had estimated them to be. So no reason not to proceed with the work from Bituminous Materials. The one thing I wanted to note is when they were estimating the patching, the amount of patching that would be required, the other quote, or LeCan Paving, actually estimated more patching that they recommended than Bituminous Materials did. So I think it might be prudent to allow a contingency in your award for city staff to authorize more patching work than Bituminous Materials had identified in their quote, just in case we get out there to do the work and the city public works staff decides that there should be more patching done, as had been indicated in LeCan's quote, by the square yard. The value of that extra patching would be about $5,700. The other thing that Bituminous Materials indicated in their quote is they put a price per square yard for soil corrections, in case when they went to do the patching they found that the soils below were soft and would benefit from being replaced with new gravel. And so I think we should put an allowance in the authorization for this work to cover a certain amount of that subgrade correction at the discretion of the public works staff, or at the direction of the public works staff, if they observe soft conditions when the work is being done. So what it all boils down to is in the conclusion on page 4 of my memo, that bullet point, my recommendation would be as follows: that the City of Kenyon accept the quote from Bituminous Materials LLC, dated April 29th, 2016, in the amount of $32,358.50 for milling and overlaying, and $4,600 for patching, which equals a subtotal of $36,958.50, with the ability for city staff to authorize up to $6,000 of additional patching and up to $2,000 of subgrade correction, based on observed conditions during construction. So the total of all work would be not to exceed $45,000, which is essentially their quoted price of $36,958 plus the $8,000 for the potential additional patching and the subgrade correction. So that would be the recommendation for the acceptance of the quote and the authorization of the work.
Do we have a motion to accept that quote, proceed with work?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
from council?
So we would move on to item 8, legal property abatement at 411 Bullitt Street. Chief Andrew, you have.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. As you probably all know, a search warrant was executed at that address about a month ago. And while on property, notice it's really in disarray. A lot of debris laying around, half-done projects, things like this. We've spoken, it's changed hands quite a bit over the years as far as who's owning it and who doesn't own it. And every time we kind of get before this point, things get cleaned up and it's kind of okay for a while, but then it gets back to it. Well, now it's kind of past that point and we really think we need to do something. So Mark suggested I visit with Scott a little bit. I was out sick and really didn't get a chance to visit him a whole lot, but I did send him some photos and so forth, and I think you've all got copies of some of that. So the neighbors aren't happy, I don't blame them, and it's kind of tough to figure out who actually is owning the property. It kind of comes into a great deal.
Now, I've got some real questions on that. According to Goodhue County Property Tax website, the legal owner is still Mr. Sherbandi with an address in Great Falls, Montana. I understand you did try to contact him at some time in the past.
Well, we did, we dealt with this house probably,
Have you ever
two
actually
different
made
occasions.
contact with
We have.
Ron?
Yeah, we did one time. We had to track him down to serve him when we adopted the resolution back in March of 2014. And Mark's correct. We've never physically talked to him, but I believe he may have
He was
talked to
served.
somebody in my office, but he was served to give notice, and then it did get cleaned up, as Lee said. Then it did actually happen back a little over 2 years ago. So we're kind of in that same position. I don't know, it may have changed hands, but
Well,
you know, he had it, he's the one who had it 2 years ago.
Mr.
That's fine.
Schaefer told me that he was buying a contractor deed, so for the longest time, I thought Mr. Galen Schaefer owned it. So that's who I've spoken to in the past, and he lives in Montana as well. He used to live in the Faribault area or somewhere in Rice County. I've met him a few times. Now, I believe another gentleman was buying it, but I think we were still having an issue before with the contract or some tax issues or something. The short version is, I don't really know for sure if any ownership has officially changed hands as of today.
Well, actually, as of right today, when I checked, there is $6,952.84 of unpaid property taxes, $313.50 of that being a judgment for a delinquent utility bill back in 2012, and another, let me see, $3,591.75 being an assessment for the cleanup that the city authorized on this property before. The property hasn't legally changed hands. I question whether these people that have been living there have any legal right to even be there.
Yeah, and the argument is they don't. You know, there was some discussion that they were given permission. I know a large group left before. The contact that was made with the folks in Montana was they'll do something, and something did happen. So, in all honesty, they did do something once, but I would say somewhat incomplete. It wasn't perfect, but we're back, if not worse, to that position and beyond. Yeah, at least based on the pictures. You know, the council prepared a notice and did adopt the resolution before to do it from a nuisance standpoint, whether it's now to the level of a hazardous building action, which is very similar type of process. You certainly can authorize it, we start moving forward. As to figuring out who owns it, we typically pull title, exactly what you've done, look at it, and that's who gets served. If anybody else has a occupancy type situation, believes they have a lease or something, we served notice to the property as well, did that. There were squatters on site back the last time. They were all served and told this is what's happening, and then they kind of disappeared.
I believe some of the original people that were there are back there.
Okay.
But it comes and goes a great
It's a
deal.
floating
Yeah,
situation.
it is.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions I have is I was in the property during the day of the search warrant, and they constructed some walls with some doors in there
Yeah.
to kind of make makeshift bedrooms and so forth. My question is in this process, is there a way to have like a building inspector
Yes.
also look at this to see, because I don't recall ever seeing any building permits
Right.
or anything like that, and I'm not super versed in all that kind of code, but I would assume you need something if you're putting up new walls and doors and all these kinds of things. I don't know if they've done any electrical work or any of that stuff.
So now that we have, evidence of that, you typically can get, if not permission from the property owner or actually the viewing from wherever we viewed it from is somewhat sufficient. But we could also get an administrative search warrant, which is fairly simple to do, to say, we need to know what's going on. We know that there's construction based on our chief of police seeing that was done without permits, but probably done inadequately. That just forms the basis, whether it's a nuisance or hazardous building
And-
action.
Also, there are known to be illegal activities going on in there, which we don't know the scope of, in close proximity to a school building, which should open up a whole nother level of penalties for the people involved in this.
Yeah, and I haven't discussed it at much length with Lee. We didn't get to talk too much on this, but I talked with Mark just briefly on it. There's a statute that applies to a meth manufacturing type situation.
Correct.
Now, whether or not we're at that
We
level.
don't know that.
We don't know, but it was distribution, but it certainly gives us the means to go and review the property and make a report, whether it's through a chief of police, through fire, through building, through county health nurse. Those are all options and probably all courses of action we'd look at to build the strongest case for whatever the council wants to do.
Well, I see it.
I'm
Go
sorry,
for it.
like in these pictures here, with these windows and so forth, I don't know if those were put in properly. I don't know what you need for codes or anything like that. I
You
don't
know what, I do not care how well the construction was
Yeah.
done. That is totally immaterial.
I'm just
There's
telling you, I had
no
no
permits.
idea
Yeah.
what, I was just taking pictures, there's so much debris in that car. I think the gentleman pretty much keeps all of his property in that car on premise. It was just, there's a lot going on there, as you can see.
No, there's clearly the basis to do exactly what the council did back in 2014, and really we've done all that work. It's all there, everything's prepared. It's no different than what we've done in the past with other properties. It's a matter of getting whatever report we feel is necessary, and if it goes beyond that and we can utilize the meth statutes for cost recoveries, that would bring the county into the equation too.
Well,
Sometimes,
that's already in,
it should be.
we've already got the assessments on your recovery
From the
costs
previous one,
already
yeah.
outlaid.
Yeah.
And this has been an issue, a bad issue for years. It's cost us money already, and it is going to cost the city and the taxpayers more before it's all resolved. It needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved as soon as feasible.
And the goal is, I want to be clear, at least my goal is after this last, Lee came and talked to me about this last, sheriff's action, thank you, raid, whatever you want to call it there. This is to get this building cleared, leveled, get the property cleaned up. That's it.
That would be the best case
No
scenario,
more
yes, and it's
clean up on the
eventually what
outside.
will have to happen.
But what I'd like to do is get to the point where that's torn down. It may not be, it's not gonna be like the just that property or anything like that. I mean, there may be, depends on what the owner, I guess, does and how he responds, but,
Right.
because you do have a structure here, but we have a building inspector that'll work with us, the county building inspectors.
Yep.
And I think they're gonna find this is not structurally viable.
I
And
can
the
tell you
quickest
that from
way
driving by it 3
to
years
get
ago.
this taken care of is through this abatement statute, not through condemnation or, there's different other legal mechanisms you can go with this abatement statute. And I thank Scott for this. We started this with the just that property is the quickest way to deal with something like this. So it may take some time. I want to be clear about that. It's not gonna
It
be-
typically does take time, we have to
Of course.
provide notice, but it is the most efficient way of the city being able to recover costs. Oftentimes, if a property owner has walked